YouTube fans, what would you do with an extra $1,000 in your pocketbook? That's a question I asked myself last week after I got an email from my favorite creator, Justin Welsh, who sent out a challenge to participate in the $1,000 weekend challenge. So I thought, wow, I like Justin. I love his tips on not just on running a great LinkedIn channel, which is what he's known for, but he always has very amazing tips on how to be a better salesperson. And I know I'm not always a great salesperson, so I thought, well, this is a nice challenge to kind of hone my skills. And I also know that I have some significant money blocks. I tend to give away my services for free and forget to charge for that. So I'm like ready to dive in and see what happens. So Friday morning, the first step is create an offer. Not as easy as it sounds. I didn't, as I mentioned, I have so many blocks. I didn't have an actual offer on my site. So I spent a little bit of time noodling my website, creating an offer. Now, for me, a gap in the marketplace is that I find that a lot of nonprofits still do very traditional marketing, and they have their donate now button, their subscribe now button. Many of the bigger nonprofits have kind of gone to impact statements, how donating or subscribing will help the organization. But very few nonprofits are leaning into some of the more modern methods of lead magnets, funnels. So there's definitely a need in the market for more innovative techniques among a lot of nonprofits. So that was easy. There's a little bit of a gap. Okay, I'm going to create a lead magnet service. And I'm going to reach out to nonprofits and let them know that that is a service I offer. And then Friday afternoon, pick your target market. So that one was fairly easy for me because I already have a fairly defined target market. I tend to work with mid-sized nonprofits, the ones that are smaller, too new, too few employees, too low of a budget. My consulting rates tend to be a little high for them. The larger nonprofits, the big giant national ones, they tend to have in-house staff and advisors already that it's a little harder for me as a solopreneur to compete against. So the mid-size where they're kind of looking for a little help. So I said, okay, great. I've got my target set. I tend to focus on arts, culture, humanities, and economic development organizations. So I had a fairly robust set of parameters. So I went to AI, I went to LinkedIn, I kind of started to define everything out. So by the end of Friday afternoon, I had my offer page in place, and I had a long list of targets I was going to reach out to through email or through LinkedIn. Okay, Saturday morning, crafting the pitch. So Justin gives a framework. I put a link below to the actual article. So if you want to replicate this process for yourself, the challenge for yourself, you can see the exact steps. And he outlines what should be in the pitch. I started out very strong. I had a strong pitch. Then it started to segment a little bit because maybe my target was too broad, because I had one pitch for theaters. I had a different pitch for museums. I had a different pitch for chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. Another pitch for humanities organizations like the Stem Cell Research Association. So once I started diluting the pitch, and then once I started looking at some of the nonprofits' websites, they were quite nice. I was like, oh, they clearly have already a talented web team in place. Imposter syndrome started to flit in. So even though they did not have a lead magnet, I was like, oh, maybe they didn't want this. And so it would definitely weaken my pitch to look at the websites like, oh, maybe they don't need my services. So then my emails became less about, let me talk about this service that I think you really need. And the emails kind of became more, hey, I'd love to network with other nonprofit professionals in New Mexico. And so the pitch itself started out fairly okay, but then as the day progressed and I was actually sending it out, it weakened and it diluted itself. So then the bulk of Saturday, I really spent just sending out pitches. I think I probably sent out about 150 pitch letters. I probably did a great majority, 75 to 100 of them were emails. And then I probably did 25 to 50 on LinkedIn, and I did probably 25 on X. And I do not have LinkedIn Navigator, so those weren't full pitches. They were connection requests. And then if somebody responded back or connected back, then I sent them a, hey, nice to meet you. And, just to let you know, this is a service I offer, and tried to keep it low key, not a hard sell pitch. So to be honest, my engagement results were fairly terrible. They didn't really... I got 0 responses. Zero interest, zero anything. I did spike on my LinkedIn connections. I went up about 5% overall. So that was pretty good on my LinkedIn connections, a lot of new nonprofit professionals. But it was a fairly exhaustive day with very little results to the efforts I had put forth. And, I think there were a lot of things. I had a lot of learnings from that. First of all, it's hard to pitch a lead magnet to nonprofits without actually having a lead magnet on my website. That's in progress. I wanted to not delay doing the outreach. I have a tendency to put off the important things as I tweak other things. And so I didn't want to do that this time. I wanted to take action, but it's hard to demonstrate a lead magnet, the success of a lead magnet. So I did talk a little bit when I was with the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. We were trying to find a way to increase member engagement, and we had created a little thumb drive, a custom thumb drive with a native dancer wearing a jingle dress, and we called it our Jingle All the Way campaign. It was out during Christmas. So I did mention that campaign and how when we deployed it, our membership rates went up about 80% for that year. But it was still hard to pitch a lead magnet without actually having one. So that was definitely, I don't think that was anything surprising. But again, I didn't want to defer action for another tactic that delayed me taking action. So for sure, the next batch of outreach I do will certainly have the lead magnet first so that I can encourage people to not go from me being a stranger to, hey, can we have a conversation when they don't know me from Adam, and giving them something to learn more about me. So that would be, I think, the big learning. The other big learning was when I left the nonprofit industry, there were certain things that I felt, as with many entrepreneurs, we leave our jobs for a reason. We don't like being managed by a large ecosystem. We don't like writing reports that are unnecessary. We don't like, everybody has their reason, right? And for me too, there were certain reasons I left the nonprofit world, and a little bit, the structure of how nonprofits are, they still tend to be a little bit, behind in innovation, behind in adopting. And this is not universal, not across the board, but there's still a lot of there's just a lot of things about not the nonprofit world that I was no longer passionate about when I left. And what I found was when I started doing this outreach, I would go to websites and I would feel some of my feels that I felt when I worked for the nonprofit industry, and I felt some of that. Maybe apathy is the word setting in, where it's like, oh, what's the use? I'm never going to affect change anyway. And then my emails continue to get even more watered down. Instead of being like, oh, wow, I could really help you fix this, it became like, oh, they probably love their site and don't realize the problems that it had. So it was all on me, but I really kind of lost my passion for the project throughout the day as I kind of identified, things on the sites that I were visiting that really I could help them with. And so instead of making me more passionate about my outreach, it made me less passionate. So I noticed that I was, I didn't have my lead magnet. I was losing steam throughout the day as I was sending out these leads. I wasn't, when I'm really into something, my emails get better. They were not getting better. As I mentioned, they were kind of becoming weaker and more diluted. So there were some really good learnings to be had in how I was doing outreach and what I would do the next time around. So the next step in Justin's challenge is follow-up, outreach, closing. I didn't have any of that to really do because I didn't have any response. I didn't see the needle moving. There were no new subscribers to my newsletter. There were no responses. Great to meet you. Nothing. It was zero response. And so it was a little discouraging. I felt a little sad, like, hey, I'm a nice person and people like me. And nobody even said, hey, nice to meet you. But I made my own mistakes and I learned a lot from those mistakes I made. So the one thing that I did take away from the campaign was that I did see a lot of engagement on LinkedIn increase. And I had part of the challenge is to post extra posts on LinkedIn with respect to your offer. And I had done that and I had prepped a few days in advance. So I had more posts, I think maybe than I had in a little while. And so over the last 2 weeks, my LinkedIn engagement went up 900%. So that was a really nice thing, like that there's, finally I felt the LinkedIn needle moving a little bit. So that was kind of one thing that I really felt, worked in my favor and I was happy with. And so then I was diving into my LinkedIn stats, and I'll show some of them. And I do not have a huge LinkedIn following, although it is growing slowly but surely. So then I dove into who's following me on LinkedIn. And the top followers, interestingly, were presidents and CEOs, which I think that was surprising for me by like a significant amount. And maybe that's because a lot of the creators I network with call themselves presidents and CEOs, but I might have thought that I was interacting more with marketing people, brand management, but really presidents and CEOs are by far as you can see here, by far my top follower. The other thing is the company types, the ones that I'm engaging with or engaging with me are travel arrangers, travel advisors, travel agents. This is not surprising to me because of my background in travel. I do have a lot of travel agent friends. I worked for a travel agent magazine for many years. I was an editor over there. So it doesn't surprise me. However, if I'm speaking the language of nonprofit and I want to build engagement, I also need to figure out how to grow and flip travel arrangers down a little bit and nonprofits up. And on my top followers, you can see nonprofits didn't appear at all. It was travel arrangers, PR and communication services, which I mentioned. That was not surprising either. Advertising services, hospitality, not surprising. And then finally writing and editing. But there's no nonprofit even on my top followers. So that was another thing that I really learned from this challenge is if I want to engage more with nonprofits, I'm going to have to go out and do some work and get some more followers and really drive some traffic to my LinkedIn page. Otherwise, I'm just marketing to the wrong target. I mean, I'm not marketing to the right people. So I need to figure out what those numbers are telling me in terms of my future on LinkedIn and what my next steps are. And then another thing that was really surprising to me was that a large number of my followers are solopreneurs or one-person companies. And so that really surprised me. I thought I had a lot more bigger engagement with bigger companies. So again, if I'm not targeting my messaging to small nonprofits, if I kind of want those mid-level nonprofits, well, I better start marketing to some companies that are more than one person, right? So again, my LinkedIn numbers are not aligning with the messaging that I'm trying to shoot out on LinkedIn. So what did I learn from this challenge? Well, first of all, I think that what I learned is I believe deeply in the mission of nonprofits, of charitable work. I am not sure over the last 2 years of all the things that I've done that I'm necessarily the right person anymore to be targeting that niche. That's just a learning that I learned from my passion for the work that I was doing. It wasn't a sustained passion for that outreach. Usually if I love to do something, I love to send out the emails and think about the possibility of connecting. I didn't feel that. So that was the first thing, is maybe I'm targeting the wrong niche. And, I'm new to the creator space. I've been doing it for months. I've been tweaking things. I've kind of been breaking things down and redoing them a couple times. And so, okay, that was a good lesson to learn that, rather than keep going on this route of targeting nonprofits, maybe take a second look at what you're doing. So that was number one. Obviously, number two, you need a lead magnet. I would recommend to Justin to update his thing, is even if it's a small one-page something. But I just think that introducing myself out of the blue with no, hey, look at my website, is not enough of a trigger to generate interest. And there needs to be some kind of quiz, some kind of download, some kind of educational course, something attached to that. And I think had I had that, even if I would have had no response from the email, I would have had maybe more people sign up for my newsletter, which, would have been a win in and of itself. And then finally, just taking a look at my numbers was very educational. I haven't, coming back to LinkedIn, I've really only been kind of actively on the space. I bought one of Justin's courses, the content system, in April. So I've really only been doing it 4 months. And I think I've been doing it with sort of mixed efforts. And, some weeks I come in really strong and post a lot. Other weeks I'm sort of hit and miss and sporadic. But having said that, my overall LinkedIn audience has grown by probably 15 to 20% over that time. So, at times it feels frustrating and slow, 15 to 20%, okay, I got 200 new subscribers, big whoop, right? But in the meantime, it's happening. But again, looking at those numbers, the right people are not coming to me. And that it may not be that the right people are not coming to me. It may be that I need to create a message for the people who are attracted to my offerings. So that is something I'm going to spend a little bit of time diving into for myself. So finally, the results were a big zero, no new subscribers, no new revenue, not even close to $1,000. However, would I do the challenge again? 100% I would. And if you are new to the creator space, new to entrepreneurialism, I would 100% download that or read that article and create the challenge for yourself. Because the reality is, it's very easy to get caught up in the allure and the glamour and all the promises the creators make across the creator space, and promises of passive income and promises of this and that. But the deep reality is, if you don't know how to sell your product, you're not going to sell it better passively than you do in person. You may be building a business that you could do less sales in person, but you need to be able to talk to people, figure out what you're doing wrong, and then, which I didn't get there yet, but also understand what people think of your product and how they're responding to it. So 100%, it was completely valuable. I will say that I did spend some time between the time I finished the challenge last weekend and the time I recorded this video. A few other things have happened that I will talk about next week, but I'm burning down my nonprofit advising consulting business. Something brand new is coming next week. So if you want to hear about it, I'm very excited. And just, you can hear in my voice how passionate and excited I am about this new thing that I think is much more aligned with what I want to do now instead of the me I was 2-3 years ago. So if you'd like to hear more about my new challenge coming up, subscribe and like this video, or head to my website, monicapoling.com, and subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll give you the big reveal next week.